I asked for a glass of water, and my daughter shouted, "We're not your servants." And that, just 3 days after I had open heart surgery. What she didn't know is that house was still in my name. Before we go on, hit that subscribe button and tell us in the comments where you're listening from. My name is Leonard Thompson. I'm 72 years old. And today, I was called a burden. After everything I built, after giving up even my dignity for that girl. There I was, sitting on the same couch I paid for, in the house I put under her name, hearing words no father should ever hear. "You're messing with our routine." I had barely stepped into the house. Just got out of the hospital a few hours ago. 3 days with my chest cut open, stitched up, held together by pain. My body was begging for rest. But when I walked through that door, there was no warmth, just coldness. "Can you not drag dirt in with those shoes?" That was the first thing Rachel said. Not a hug. Not even a, "How are you, Dad?" Her husband Oliver stayed glued to the couch, laughing at some nonsense on TV. I took a deep breath, feeling more fragile than ever, and said, "I just need to sit down for a moment." I sank into the armchair that used to be mine, the one I bought back when I still believed that generosity would come back as gratitude. But that afternoon, it hit me. I was completely alone. "Could I trouble you for a glass of water?" I asked. My voice was weak, worn. Rachel turned with a look I'll never forget. "We're not your servants, Dad." The silence that followed echoed like a scream in my head. I tried to explain, my voice shaking. "I just got out of the hospital." "You've got legs, don't you?" she snapped, turning her back. Oliver chuckled. "Easy there, old man. Don't fall and make a mess." Make a mess. That's what they called me. Me, who paid for their wedding, bought their car, put down the payment on this house with my late wife's life insurance. Rachel's mom, who died thinking she was leaving her daughter a sense of security. I stood up. Every step felt like a knife to the chest. The surgery pain was bad, but nothing compared to what I felt inside. The girl I raised with love now saw me as a burden. I made it to the sink, steadying myself on the counter. My hand trembled as I held the glass. Took a sip. And that water tasted like betrayal. I walked slowly back to the living room. The TV kept laughing. So did they, like I was just a shadow passing by. I looked them both in the eyes. "You two remember what I said when I signed this house over to your names?" Oliver shrugged. Rachel didn't even look at me. I said, "Family takes care of family." That was the deal. It wasn't written on paper, but it was here, in the heart. And today, they broke it. Rachel laughed, sarcastic. "Oh great, here comes the guilt trip." It wasn't a guilt trip, it was a warning. I leaned back in the chair. The pain throbbed. But for the first time, it helped me stay awake, helped me see clearly, helped me remember who I am. They think I'm old, that I'm weak, that they can shove me into a corner and wait for me to fade away. But they forgot who built this house, who signed every check, who was man enough to give up everything he had, and now is man enough to take it all back. They don't know it yet, but in 3 days, their routine will never be the same again. This house, the one where they called me a burden, where they acted like getting me a glass of water was too much to ask. It has a price, literally, and every inch of it, every brick, every wall, was paid for with the death of the only woman who ever truly loved me. Sarah, my wife, for 41 years. When she found out she had cancer, it was already too late. She lasted just over 5 months, but before she passed, she made me promise 2 things: that I wouldn't let the family fall apart, and that I'd use her life insurance to give our daughter a decent future. She made me sign that paper with tears in her eyes. "Promise me you'll use this money with love," she whispered. And I promised. And I kept my word. 3 months after we buried her, I sold our old house. Took the $350,000 from the policy and bought this 2-story home. Backyard, 2-car garage, 3 bedrooms. I did it all quietly. Rachel was still trying to get back on her feet after losing her mom. Oliver was out of work, barely scraping by with rent. I showed up with the keys and the paperwork, put everything under her name. She cried, "Dad, this is too much, we can't accept this." And I said, "The house is yours. I just want a small room in the back when I get old." "But Dad, it's what your mother wanted." That was the deal. No paperwork, just a promise from the heart. And now look what it's become. I was treated like a stranger in the house grief bought, called a burden by the people who should have hugged me. And the cruelest part? They don't even know the truth. They think I paid for this house with retirement money. They think it was generosity. But no, it was sacrifice. It was death. It was the final act of love from a woman who never lived to see her daughter's ingratitude. And maybe that's why it hurts so much. Because if Sarah knew, if she saw what I saw yesterday, it would break her heart. That night, I sat on the edge of my bed, chest pounding, and I asked myself, did I do this? Did spoiling them turn them into this? Oliver and Rachel walk around like the world owes them something. When the car broke down, I bought them a new one. When the kitchen felt outdated, I paid for the remodel. When Oliver's business flopped 6 months after opening, who pulled $12,000 from savings to save their credit? Me. And still, they wouldn't get me a glass of water. The photos on the wall stared back at me like silent witnesses. Rachel's graduation, their engagement dinner, Sarah's birthday, smiles that now feel fake, memories that now stand as evidence. The next day while they went out shopping, I walked through the house in silence. I went to the safe, pulled out the insurance documents, the deed, old bank statements, put everything in a yellow folder. Every page brought back a memory. Every number reopened a wound. But also, it started forming a plan. They think I'm too old to fight back, that after surgery I don't have the strength to stand up for myself. But what they forgot is this: a betrayed man doesn't grow old. He wakes up. And now that I've opened those papers again, they're about to learn what happens when you mess with the memory of someone who's still alive. All I ever asked for was respect. Just the basics, some decency. And in return, they locked me in the very room I once called mine. The room I painted, renovated, furnished with my own hands. Now, it's a cell. It was a gray afternoon. The stitches on my chest were still fresh, and I was still trying to understand how the house I'd lived in for 5 years had turned so hostile. I spoke to Rachel in the hallway, calm, but firm. "We need to talk about what happened yesterday." She crossed her arms and spoke like she was dealing with a nursing home patient. "Dad, you're still recovering. Just get some rest." Before I could respond, Oliver showed up, holding a glass of juice. "Go lay down, old man. You can say whatever you want tomorrow." They guided me back with fake smiles and firm hands, and then I heard it, the click of the lock turning, locked, from the outside, in my own house. I tried the doorknob. Nothing. Tried the window. It opened, but led to a steep drop over 10 feet onto solid concrete. With my chest still healing, jumping wasn't an option, but staying in there wasn't either. I sat on the bed, heart racing. This wasn't just ingratitude anymore. This was confinement. This was psychological abuse. This was fear. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. I thought about what I had with me. My phone? Gone. They took my phone. My folder of documents? Gone from the drawer. My wallet? No longer in the jacket pocket. They stripped me of everything, inside the very home I gave them. And in that choking silence, I saw Sarah's face again, on her deathbed. "Promise you'll keep the family together," I promised. But promising doesn't mean becoming someone's doormat. That was the moment it hit me. Love without boundaries turns into submission, and emotional neglect is a form of theft. They stole from me. They stole my peace. They stole my right to exist as a father. They stole my dignity. That's when I looked out the window, and I saw him. Mark, my neighbor, retired Air Force, widower like me, always kind. He was rolling up a garden hose in his yard. I leaned on the windowsill and yelled, "Mark!" He looked up, startled. "Leonard, you okay?" "No." My voice came out stronger than I expected. "They locked me in here, took my phone, called the police." His face changed instantly. He dropped the hose, grabbed his phone, and started dialing. "What's the address?" 1475 Lincoln Avenue. Tell them it's a property dispute and unlawful confinement of a senior." He repeated everything loud and clear. I could hear the dispatcher through the phone from where I stood. And for the first time in 3 days, I felt something I hadn't felt since leaving the hospital. Hope. I walked back toward the door, listening for footsteps. Rachel and Oliver were in the living room, laughing at something on TV, completely unaware that the hell they created was about to blow wide open. And me? I wasn't alone anymore. The police were on their way, and what they thought was control was about to become evidence. Evidence of abuse. Evidence of neglect. Proof that the old man they thought they could silence was about to make more noise than ever. The sound of the doorbell hit like thunder on a cloudy Sunday afternoon. Rachel jumped up. Oliver looked over at me, still pretending he had no clue what was going on. But I knew. And so did Mark, standing outside. The police had arrived. Rachel forced a calm, fake tone. "I'll get it. Just stay there, Dad. You're a little worked up." She opened the door with that syrupy, sweet voice people put on when there's an audience. "Good afternoon, officers." "Good afternoon. I'm Officer Mendez. This is Officer Carla. We received a call about a possible case of elderly confinement." Oliver stepped in, acting like it was all a big misunderstanding. "This has to be a mistake. My father-in-law had heart surgery this week. He's been a little confused." Confused. That's how they tried to erase me, turn my clarity into delusion, my demand for respect into some kind of hysteria. I walked up slowly, hand on my chest, but my mind steady. "Officers, I was locked in that room against my will, and they took my phone." Officer Carla turned right to me. "Can you confirm you weren't able to leave the room?" The doorknob was jammed. I only got help because I yelled out the window to my neighbor. Rachel gave a nervous smile. "Dad, you thought it was locked. That door sticks sometimes. We didn't mean any harm." My blood boiled. She was good, cold, calculated. "Then what about the phone? Why was it gone?" I asked. Oliver pulled it from his pocket. "It was charging in the kitchen. He must have forgotten." I looked straight at the officers. They're lying, and they're using my surgery as an excuse to keep me locked up. Rachel acted offended. "Are you serious? You're saying we locked you in the house? We're the ones taking care of him." Officer Carla looked at me. "Sir, are you currently on any strong medications?" "I am, but my mind is clear." "Do you feel safe in this house?" "No." That one word changed everything. But Rachel didn't give up. "He also said yesterday that his mom was still alive." A total lie. And they knew that even without proof, suggesting confusion could be enough to discredit me entirely. For the next 20 minutes, the officers asked routine questions, walked through the house, and took notes. But the tone was obvious. They were leaning toward believing them. Apparently, a well-dressed young couple always seems more credible than a 72-year-old man with a weak voice and fresh surgery scars. When the officers decided to leave, Officer Carla said, "Mr. Thompson, if you ever feel unsafe again, don't hesitate to call. But right now, there's no clear evidence of a crime." As the door closed behind them, Oliver chuckled. "That was fun. You almost had me convinced." Rachel looked at me with cold hatred. "That was the dumbest thing you've ever done." I went back to my room. This time they didn't lock the door, but I wasn't fooled. Now they knew I would fight back, which made them even more dangerous. I sat on the edge of the bed. The phone was finally in my hands, and in my notes was the contact for the lawyer, the same man who handled the deed to this house 5 years ago. And right there, sitting in the space between relief and full-blown rage, I realized something that changed everything. If they were going to silence me with lies, then I'd respond with law, with documents, with evidence. They tried to paint me as a confused old man, but they forgot something. I've been quiet my whole life. Now, they're going to hear me loud and clear. The police left, but the problem stayed. Rachel and Oliver were colder than ever, more calculated, and I was still stuck inside those 4 walls, stitched up on the outside, shattered on the inside. I thought the officer's visit would be the turning point, but it was just the spark. That same night, as the sun went down and the silence in the house froze time, they locked me in again. This time there was no pretending. Rachel came to my door, put her hand on my shoulder and said, "You should get some rest. We'll talk tomorrow." 3 seconds later, I heard the click. Locked. From the outside, again, no excuse about a jammed doorknob this time. This time it was deliberate, planned, cruel, and just like before, my phone was gone. Not even the charger was left behind. I looked around. No documents. Nothing of mine. Their TV was on in the living room, laughing away. And me? Locked up. Again. I sat on the bed, but I couldn't calm down. My hands were sweating, my heart racing. The pain in my chest throbbed. And it wasn't just from the surgery. I went to the window. Was it locked? No. But it opened over a flower bed nearly 10 feet down. Maybe with a healthy body I'd take the risk. But with fresh stitches across my chest, it'd be like Russian roulette. But staying there, locked up by the daughter I raised, silenced by a son-in-law who lived off my wallet, it was that, or surrender. I placed my hands on the wall, took a deep breath, and walked over to the closet. Carefully changed clothes, put on an old sweatshirt, propped a pillow on the windowsill, sat down. At 72 years old with fragile ribs and internal stitches, I became a fugitive, a hostage escaping his own family. I pushed myself, one leg out, then the other, sat on the ledge like I was 20 again, and I thought, if I fall and don't get back up, what will they say? He lost it. He was confused. It was an accident. No, it wouldn't be an accident. It would be a choice. The choice to stop being a puppet, to stop being the old man in the way. I lowered myself down. The fall was quick, and the pain like an electric jolt through my body. Every bone, every stitch, every memory ached. But when I smelled the dirt, I knew I was free. I stood up slowly, shaking, but standing. I walked to the side of the house. The motion sensor light blinked. I waited for a car to pass, then made my way to the front porch, lifted the mat. The spare key was still there. 3 years in that hiding spot. I never thought I'd actually need it. I unlocked the door, stepped inside, quietly. They were in the living room, laughing at some reality show, chatting about a new restaurant. They had no idea the confused old man had just walked back in through the front door and was about to become their worst nightmare. I didn't go to them. I went straight to the bedroom, grabbed the folder, the copy of the deed, my lawyer's contact, Sarah's life insurance policy, and that night, I didn't sleep. I sorted, reviewed, studied, planned. They think that escape was the end, but it was just the beginning. Tomorrow morning, I'm knocking on the door of the one man who can turn this pain into justice. The night was long, but for the first time in days, I didn't feel defeated. Yes, there was pain, in my bones, in my stitches, in my soul. But alongside the pain came something different. Clarity. At 7 a.m., I called Michael O'Connor's office. He wasn't just my lawyer, he was a good man. He'd handled the house transfer, Sarah's probate paperwork, and everything related to her life insurance. Michael, I need you. Today. On the other end, he just said, 8 a.m. sharp. Bring everything. I got there early, clutching that yellow folder to my chest. He greeted me like always, gray suit, steady eyes, and the kind of respectful silence that said more than any hug ever could. You look tired, Leonard. What happened? I told him everything. Every word. The locked door. The police. The fall. The act. Their attempt to paint me as a senile old man. Michael didn't interrupt. Just took notes and breathed deeply. They locked you in the room after you tried to make them leave the house? Yes. And they used your heart surgery as an excuse to say you're not capable. Exactly. He leaned back in his chair. Then what was just a possibility yesterday is now an emergency. He opened a drawer and pulled out the house deed, the donation agreement, and the attachments. You remember when we did this transfer? I suggested adding a reversion clause. Reversion? In case of mistreatment, abandonment, or a breakdown in the living arrangement. I went silent. I didn't remember that. At the time, all I wanted was for Rachel to feel secure. You signed it, and so did she. It's right here. Michael pointed to a nearly hidden paragraph, buried in the cold language of legal terms. There it was. If there was a drastic change in behavior, or a breach of emotional and familial commitments, the house would automatically revert to me. Is this real? Leonard, legally, that house is still yours. I held my breath for a moment, but she doesn't know that. And it's better that way. Michael opened another file, started writing. We'll draft the official revocation of the donation, based on evidence, testimony, and broken trust. How long until they have to move out? 3 days after they receive the notice. And if they refuse, then we file for eviction and unlawful possession. His words sounded like music, justice with rhythm. And what if they try to say I'm mentally unstable? They'll try. Michael looked me straight in the eyes. But if they're using your surgery as a way to take away your autonomy, that qualifies as psychological abuse of a senior. He printed the documents, stamped them, signed and dated them, handed me everything in a sealed envelope. Are you planning to deliver this yourself? No. Good. I'll hire a process server. They won't have time to come up with a new story. I walked out of that office with my head held high. The sun lit up the windshield, and in the passenger seat was the invisible weapon they never saw coming. The truth. Justice that doesn't shout. Revenge that doesn't use fists, just the weight of the law. They made me a prisoner. But now, they're about to lose the ground they thought they owned forever. The next morning, the house looked the same. The smell of Rachel's coffee, Oliver's TV buzzing in the background, the clinking of mugs. But me? I was not the same man. The folder with the document sat next to me on the dining table. Sealed envelope, urgent stamp, and 3 words Rachel never thought she'd hear. You have 3 days. I waited for them to finish their coffee. I didn't want drama. I didn't want a fight. I just wanted them to look at me and finally understand. That frail old man they thought they knew was gone. Rachel, Oliver, we need to talk. Now. They looked at me like I'd just interrupted a board meeting. Rachel crossed her arms. Oliver leaned against the wall, phone in hand. What now, Dad? I took a deep breath, grabbed the envelope, opened it, and started reading. Slowly, clearly, with conviction. Formal notice of revocation of property donation under the reversion clause for abandonment and violation of moral and familial duties. They froze. What is this? Oliver asked, laughing nervously. This, I said, is the end. Rachel stood up from her chair. You're saying you're taking the house away from us? I'm saying the house is mine. It always was. You only lived here because I allowed it. And now, that permission is over. Oliver stepped closer, trying to puff himself up. Have you lost your mind? We live here. We have rights. No, you had one condition, and you broke it. You locked me up, humiliated me, treated me like garbage. There are consequences for that. Rachel slowly sat back down, her face pale. But Dad, this is insane. We messed up, yes, but we can change. It's too late for that. I held up the second document. You have 3 days to vacate the property. If you don't, the legal process moves forward, and the court handles the eviction. Oliver stepped forward. After everything we've done for you? I smiled. What exactly have you done for me? Locked me in a room? Called me dead weight? Used my surgery to discredit me in front of the police? Rachel was crying. Dad, we were scared. We didn't know how to handle it all. I know. You handled it with coldness, with cruelty. And now you'll be handled by the law. I placed the papers on the table. They didn't dare touch them, just stared at them like a death sentence, which in a way, it was. You're not going to forgive us? Rachel asked. Not today. And maybe, never. I stood up slowly. The pain in my chest was still there, but it wasn't the same kind of pain. It wasn't helplessness anymore. It was grief. Grief for who I thought my daughter was, and for who I finally realized she became. 3 days. Use them however you want. Oliver scoffed. And where are we supposed to go, huh? Do you even care? I cared for years. I cared when I paid for your car, the renovations, the bills. But now, you'll figure it out on your own. I walked back to my room, closed the door, and for the first time in years, I felt like I owned something again. My space, my story, my silence. The noise in the living room stopped. No more arguing, just silence. And when silence comes from the guilty, it's because the fall has already begun. By the afternoon of the second day, the house had gone quiet. No TV, no clinking pans, just the sound of boxes being taped shut, furniture scraping across the floor, and a kind of crying that doesn't come from the throat. It comes from deep in the gut. Rachel cried nonstop. Oliver said nothing, just stacked their things head down. The arrogance was gone. So was the confidence. I sat in the living room, envelope in hand. But it wasn't the legal envelope this time. It was another one. Heavier. Older. With my wife's name printed in the top corner. Sarah Thompson, Northwestern Mutual Life. Before you go, sit down. They obeyed without question. Rachel's eyes were swollen. Oliver's face was pale. You think you're losing a house, but that's not all. You're losing the right to ignore the truth. I laid the documents on the table. Death certificate, insurance policy, life insurance agreement, bank transfer, $350,000. Dad, what is this? Rachel whispered. It's the reason you've lived here all along. She picked up the papers with trembling hands. Read them. Stopped. Then read them again. This is from Mom? When your mother found out she was dying, she made me promise to use everything to give you a home. I didn't know. I never told you. I didn't want you to live here feeling like it was a burden. I wanted you to see this house as a gift of love, not as the outcome of a tragedy. Oliver leaned forward. So, the house was bought with your mother-in-law's death, with the love of a woman who believed family came before everything. Rachel sobbed. And I treated you like dead weight? Yes. And you treated your mother's final act of love like trash. We sat in silence. The kitchen clock ticked away, annoyingly loud. But no one moved. Your mother, she made me promise this house would always be where family stayed together. But you turned it into a war zone and made me a prisoner in it. Rachel knelt down in front of me. Dad, please forgive me. I swear, I didn't know. I swear. I placed my hand over hers. Forgiveness is another promise, and I'm not ready to make any more right now. But I hope, one day, you'll be ready to honor your mother's memory. Because today, you shamed everything she left behind. She lowered her head. You're right. Oliver stood up, picked up the house keys from the table. And for the first time, no pride, no anger, no defiance, he handed them to me. These belong to you. They always did. The keys felt heavy, not because of the metal, but because of what they meant. I held them tight. You have until tomorrow. Rachel turned at the door. Mrs. Thompson. She'd be ashamed of me, wouldn't she? She'd be heartbroken. But even then, she'd leave the door open. I'm not that strong anymore. They walked out in silence, didn't look back. And for the first time since Sarah passed, the house felt at peace. A quiet peace, but a fair one. I closed the door slowly. Sunlight spilled across the living room floor. I walked to the couch, sat down, breathed, and looked around. Nothing had changed physically, but everything felt different. Because now, every wall in that house was mine again. And even if the revenge had been silent, justice was loud. And it echoed for the ones who needed to hear it. Revenge doesn't always need yelling. Sometimes all it takes is a signed piece of paper and a door closing on the right side. Leonard didn't lose the house. He reclaimed his dignity. And you? Have you thought about who's living rent-free in your silence? Leave a comment below and hit subscribe so you don't miss the next story. Because the next one might just sound a little like yours.